Over the years, St. Louis has produced some outstanding local athletes.
The handoff to Maroney. He goes standing into the end zone for a 4-yard touchdown run.
But not every road to stardom has been an easy ride.
Cox filed a lawsuit against the NFL stating that they had required him to work in a racially hostile environment.
101 ESPN now proudly presents this exclusive presentation of Hometown Heroes.
The hottest hitter on this team stands in between Mark Buehrle and perfection.
Yes! Now here's your host for today's program, Brian Feldman.
Tell 'em I'm coming home.
For some star athletes, it takes years for them to realize their talents. For others like Mark Buehrle, they just know from a very early age. Not long after being born on March 23, 1979, his parents discovered just how gifted their child was. Mark's father, John Buehrle, explains the first time he and his wife, Pat, suspected Mark had something special.
When he was real young, we would take him to school carnivals. When I say young, I'm talking 18 months to 2 years old. We'd take him to school carnivals, and they would have these posters of like a clown or a bunny rabbit with a mouth cut out, and you had to throw 3 bean bags through to get a stuffed animal or some prize. And at 18 months or 24 months, more often than not, my wife and I were asked to leave shortly after our arrival because Mark was winning everything there was to win, and we were sitting there with arms full of stuffed animals.
Mark's father, John, also says the carnival became a spectacle.
The looks that we were getting weren't looks of people being upset, but more of astonishment. We were drawing crowds because people couldn't believe what they were seeing. There's this little twerp out there, pitching these bean bags and was getting all these stuffed animals. It was an amazement. And, so we were drawing people over there watching him do this, and they were, go, kind of cheering him on, sort of thing. So it was neat. It was really neat.
That talent certainly translated onto the field when Mark started playing in Little League. He loved the sport so much, in fact, his parents got him involved a year early, before the age limit of about 7. And he did so well as a left-handed pitcher, teams from out of state started contacting them trying to recruit Mark. It even got to the point where Mark's younger sister, Amy, could not believe how talented he was at baseball.
I mean, I know he's my brother, and people are like, oh, you always think he's so good, but he was always above and beyond everybody. So, I mean, I remember back, as early as probably 6, 7 years old going to games, and that's what our weekends and our nights were full of, was going to watch, Bubby play baseball. And I can remember back to him being just amazing. And I remember asking my mom and dad a couple times, why don't these other kids play like Mark? And why aren't they as good as Bubby is? And, why does he throw harder and throw faster? And,
The dominance she's talking about helped Mark Buehrle pitch at what used to be called the National Blue level for a few years. That was before he moved to an elite traveling team called the St. Louis Aces. Gus Lombardo was head coach at the time, and he remembers Buehrle very clearly.
He was really a little guy, but he always threw strikes. And he always had an off-speed pitch that would get people out. And even at a young age, Mark had control, yeah. He hit the corners, put the ball where he wanted. He always worked quickly. He got himself into a good rhythm during the game, even when he was little. He's always had that changeup. Had a great changeup. I just never forget about the changeup because it's a great pitch.
That great pitch helped lead the Aces to the Little League World Series in Missouri at the age of 11. Then the next year at age 12, Buehrle's Aces went to the Little League World Series in Omaha, Nebraska, and played teams from all over the country. Mark's good friend Nick Post was also there playing for a rival team, but remembers being quite envious of Buehrle.
They went on deep in the tournament, and I was always a bit more jealous of him for going to that team and playing and getting to go on TV in Omaha, Nebraska, and playing in big games like that. He got picked up to a team that made it further than I did, and I was always jealous and wanted to be in his shoes, to be in the spotlight of the Little League World. Even though our team was there in the same term as them, they went on to play a little bit further, made it further along than we did.
The Aces did not win it all, though, losing to the Wichita Blasters in the semifinals. But that experience in the Little League World Series still told Mark Buehrle everything he needed to know about what his dreams were in life. It became a foregone conclusion. He wanted to become a Major League Baseball player. And Mark's older brother, Jason, recalls him having no problem relaying that dream to others.
We'd go somewhere and people would ask us, what do you want to do when you get older? And I would always say, I want to be a fireman or a cop or whatever, and they'd ask Mark, well, what do you want to do when you get older? And he'd say, play baseball. And they'd kind of chuckle, no, seriously, like, what do you want to do for a living? Like, what do you want to do to make money? And Mark, he'd look at him dead serious. Play baseball.
But playing the sport was not the only passion Mark Buehrle possessed as a child. Mark says he loved nothing more than to follow the hometown team in St. Louis.
Anybody grows up in the St. Louis area, obviously watch Cardinal baseball and listen to on the radio, watch every game that's on TV. Obviously, I grew up a Cardinal fan and remember going to games with my dad, and when my grandpa was alive, we'd go down there for a couple games, and just family members. Anytime my dad would get tickets, through work, I'd come home from school and Dad would be sitting there and say, hey, we're going to eat dinner. We're going to go down to the Cardinal game. I got some tickets from, whatever company that kind of gave them to him. So just remember getting home, eating dinner, getting excited, and going down to the Busch Stadium and watching Cardinal baseball.
And going to games constantly gave him his very first sports hero.
Everybody asks me who's your favorite player growing up, and I've always said Todd Buehrle. And to this day, I don't know why. Obviously he's a right-handed power pitcher. I'm a left-handed thumber, and just rely on making pitches and using off-speed stuff. But I don't know if it was every time we went to a Cardinal game, he was pitching, or I don't know what it was, but for some reason I fell in love with him, and I love Todd Buehrle, so I took over 38, had it as long as I could. In the little leagues, I had a necklace with a number on there. Went back in the day when that was cool.
It's a necklace that Buehrle still has to this day. Coming up next, what was Mark Buehrle like during his high school years? And how close did he come to actually quitting baseball? Find out next when Hometown Heroes continues on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN's Hometown Heroes series. Now back to your host, Brian Feldman.
With all the success Mark Buehrle had as a kid playing elite Little League baseball, things should have been very easy for him in high school. But unfortunately, they were not. At Francis Howell North his freshman year, Buehrle made it to the end of tryouts and was one of the final cuts. It was extremely hard on him, especially after all the success he had in Little League. Things were made even worse his sophomore year when it happened again. For the second straight season, Mark Buehrle was one of the final cuts. Now, the reason for why he did not make the team is very unclear. There's a lot of different stories being told to this day, and no one is totally sure if one or any of them are true. One story from his freshman year has another player who was not as good as him getting grades when Buehrle did something good on the field, and Buehrle got graded when the other guy played, leading to a rather poor evaluation. Buehrle recalls.
The guy's actually a friend of mine, Mark Bauer, and supposedly there's a student teacher, a kid that was, writing notes down, and it was Mark B and Mark B, and supposedly every time that they kind of got us mixed up. I've heard that story too. I don't know how true it is.
Then the other story being told comes from Buehrle's eventual varsity coach at the time, Bob Donahue, who heard another version.
I do know the situation that occurred his freshman year, and I just found this out like 5 years ago when I was having lunch with the principal and Coach Ricker. And I, jestingly said, how could you ever cut that kid? And the guy who was the unpaid assistant said that he'd had Mark in class and he loved Mark to death, but Mark had said something. And this guy said, hey, he disrespected me. Now, this guy was like 21 years old, fresh out of college. He disrespected me, which I can't see Mark doing. I think Mark was just making a joke. And when it came down to Mark being on the team or not being on the team, the guy said, if you keep him and he disrespects me, I'm not gonna coach. Now that was a freshman year. Now that was what they told me. Is that true or not? I don't know, and I really don't care because that's a silly reason as far as I'm concerned as a coach and as a professional educator.
As bad as that sounds, the next year might be even worse. Donahue says he told the JV coach at the time to make sure Buehrle makes the team that season. One of the reasons was because the varsity team was facing a left-hander in their first game, and he wanted Mark to pitch against them in practice. So at the end of tryouts, he went up to that JV coach and asked him about Buehrle. And Donahue remembers his response.
Coach, I must have left him off because he hasn't been with us for the last 4 days. And I said, what do you mean you left him off? And he showed me the list, and his name wasn't on there, the guys that he kept. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, I told you to keep him. And at that point in time, I just cut bait.
That's right. Donahue fired the JV coach after the season for not following his directions regarding Mark Buehrle. And to this day, Donahue does not believe that coach meant to cut him. He thinks it was simply an accident.
No, I don't think it was on purpose. I just think that for whatever reason, because I can't believe that he wouldn't want him on his team. I think he actually left him off. And that, talking about flukes, he could evaluate talent. I didn't have a problem with that. I just have a problem with him not following, what I'd asked him to do.
Firing the JV coach was not the only thing done as a result of cutting Mark Buehrle. Donahue says that moment created a major change in the program.
That's how the Buehrle rule came into effect. After that, I instituted a policy where I make all the final cuts as the head coach on the freshman level, sophomore level, and the varsity. Because I don't think Mark was ever told he was cut his sophomore year. I think he looked at the list, which we don't post lists anymore. Now we sit the kids down and I talk to each and every one of them on each and every level.
Donahue also explains even further changes he made.
I revamped a couple things, such as from that point on, when we had tryouts, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, we all try out together. And the varsity coaches go down and look at the freshmen and sophomores first, and the sophomore and JV coaches go up and look at the varsity players, and basically we have 4 evals on every kid throughout our program, create a paper trail. Parent comes back and says, Coach such and such didn't like him. Well, here's 4 evaluations. And then I have to sign off on every cut that's made. So, good check and balance system. I wish I had done it earlier. Plus, it gives all the coaches in the entire program extended knowledge of everybody that's in the program, and that's because of the Buehrle rule.
Well, all of those changes certainly did not help Mark Buehrle. Getting cut was one of the toughest things he ever had to go through, and not just getting cut once, but twice. He says it caused him to reevaluate his whole athletic career.
Kind of wanted to quit baseball, saying, hey, obviously you can't make your freshman and JV team, which obviously are the 2 easiest teams to make. I'm obviously not going to make it to the varsity team my junior year because I didn't make the easiest 2 teams. So just almost kind of gave up, and parents said, hey, talk you into going off 1 more year. We didn't raise a quitter. We'd like for you to try it 1 more time. If you get cut this time, then you can kind of move on and do whatever else you want to do, but at least try it for 1 more time.
Mark's father, John Buehrle, remembers the encounter from his perspective. After dinner one night, John told his wife, Pat, he was going to have the father-son talk and went into Mark's room while he was doing homework. He says Mark always knew when tryouts were the first 2 years, but was very evasive about the topic that 3rd year. John Buehrle continues.
I looked at him and said, Mark, so I talked to Coach today. And he had this look in his eyes like, oh, crap, we got busted. He knew something was up. So I said, tryouts are in 2 days. I said, so you going to go out or what? And he just kind of hung his head and kind of didn't really know what to say. And he said something to the effect of, no, I don't think so, Dad. He said, it's just, I've been cut the past 2 years. I don't know why. He said, it really hurt me. He said, I can't stand the rejection or the disappointment. I said, well, tell you what. I said, that's part of life. He said, your rejections, your disappointments, you've got to have those in life. You take those bad times, turn around, trying to learn from them, and make a negative into a positive. And I said, your mother and I never raised a quitter. If you're going to quit on yourself now, you're never, ever going to complete anything. You're going to quit yourself the rest of your life.
Then a couple days later, on the day of tryouts, John Buehrle came home from work and waited for Mark to return from school. He describes how nervous he was.
I was thinking, well, did he really go out and try out, or is he sitting at White Castle sucking down a soda waiting to come home or something? So he pulled up in the driveway, and he got out of the car, and he had a smile from ear to ear. I didn't want to read too much into it, but I was really hoping. And he come walking through his front door, and he said, I made it.
From there, the rest is history. Mark Buehrle not only made the team, he had immediate success. Pitching in 6 games as a junior because of a weather-shortened 21-game season, the lefty went 3-0 with a 0.51 ERA. In fact, he gave up just 1 earned run all year long. Then as a senior, Buehrle was impressive again, appearing in 11 games, 8 starts. He went 7-1 with a 1.21 earned run average. He was named first team All-Conference, second team All-District, and honorable mention All-Metro. But as good as he was all year long, he did not finish well. Francis Howell North went 21-5 that season and advanced to the district championship against Francis Howell. Head coach Bob Donahue remembers trying to decide who to pitch in that game, Buehrle or another top starter named John Estes.
He and Mark were our top 2 guys, okay? my assistant coach came in and said, I don't know if we should throw Mark. He might have the yips. And I said, look, Coach, he's thrown a one-hitter against them, and he's thrown a one-hitter against Rittner. And he said, well, this is the biggest game he's ever going to pitch. And I said, well, he needs to pitch in these types of games. And I pitched him. Instead of throwing Estes, I pitched him. And Mark's control in high school was impeccable. And he uncharacteristically walked like 4 guys. Then he struck out a guy with the bases loaded, like in the 4th, with 2 outs, and his best friend, Steve Buehrle, was catching. And he picked up the ball and hurriedly threw it to first base and went down the right field line, and a couple more runs scored. But we ended up losing that game. I took Mark out finally after 5 innings. Great learning experience for him and me.
Buehrle's squad lost that game 6-5. He went 5 1/3 innings, gave up 6 hits and 4 runs. Donahue says he has played that game over and over again in his mind because they beat Francis Howell that year 3 times, and he feels they would have been the favorites to win state if they'd gotten out of districts. But even with all of that, in hindsight, of course, being 2020, Donahue admits he still would not change a thing.
Looking back at it, I thought it was something that I needed to do for a kid that had pitched really well for us. I thought he'd earned that start. We had Estes in the relief. He'd already thrown a one-hitter against them. Plus, we could use Estes on Wednesday then to pitch our sectional game. Seriously, if I had to do it over again, I still think I would have done that because, hey, it's high school baseball. And maybe the lesson that Mark learned that day, I'm sure that memory lives vividly with him. I don't think I'd have done it any differently because it was a gut feeling and I went with it.
Despite the fact Mark Buehrle lost the final game he ever pitched in high school, his number 38 was, and always will be, retired at Francis Howell North. Coming up next, why did Mark Buehrle end up going to Jefferson Community College? And how did he do pitching against Albert Pujols while he was there? Find out next when Hometown Heroes continues on 101 ESPN.
This is 101 ESPN's special presentation of Hometown Heroes. Once again, here's your host, Brian Felton.
Despite setting many school records at Francis Howell North, Mark Buehrle was not highly recruited out of high school. He had offers from a few places, but not many Division I schools. Rick Fiala was the assistant coach at Jefferson Community College, and he explains why more places did not want Buehrle.
Because he was a late bloomer, nobody knew who he was. He just played Legion ball. He wasn't playing for any select teams. He wasn't even the top pitcher on their team at the time when he was a junior, but they also had a very, very good high school team. They were one of the top teams in the state. His senior year, he just started improving velocity, and he was probably only upper 70s when he was a junior, and he finally reached 80 or 81 when he was a senior. And so that's when people started to take a little bit of notice.
And Jefferson Community College was one of those schools that took notice. Fiala remembers how he ever found out who Mark Buehrle was.
It's kind of a funny story because it was about in the middle of the week, probably April, when he was a senior in high school, and we were actually recruiting a pitcher from his team, but it wasn't Mark. And when I called Bobby Donahue about when they were going to play, he said, there's this guy named Mark Buehrle that you really need to look at. And I said, well, I've never heard of Mark, but I'd love to watch him pitch. When's the next time he's pitching? He's going to pitch this Friday up at Troy, is what he said. And so I said, well, how do you get to Troy? And so I left practice early at Jefferson College and drove all the way up to Troy, Missouri, and watched him pitch. I was pretty impressed with what I saw. He wasn't an overly hard thrower. He's only about 80 miles an hour, but he had good mechanics. He had a good feel for the game. And so after the game, I talked to him for the very first time with a couple of the other players. We invited him to come down for a recruiting visit. He came down the very next day for a recruiting visit. And then Sunday, 2 days later, I talked to him on the phone. In that quick of a time, he committed to Jefferson College. He thought it was something that it was a perfect fit for him.
But Fiala also says there was a point where Buehrle improved so much, they thought he might decommit from Jefferson.
We saw him at the end of the summer in a Legion All-Star game, and he was touching 84, 85 at that time. And Mizzou and a couple other schools saw him pitching that game, and they started talking to him, and we were worried we were going to lose him at the last second because Dave Oster and I had driven down to Sullivan, Missouri to watch him pitch in that All-Star game. But he stayed committed to us, and we were very fortunate to have him.
They were extremely fortunate. Buehrle went 8-0 in his freshman season back in 1998, and lucky for him, they still had the draft and follow system in professional baseball, where teams could pick someone and watch them the next year to decide if they wanted to sign them. Also lucky for Buehrle, he had a head coach in Dave Oster who was a part-time scout for the Chicago White Sox. Oster says he made sure the organization knew about his left-handed starter.
I was working along with a man named John Casanis and Nathan Durst. Those were two of the higher-up guys, and told them that we had a left-hander that I thought was a guy to follow. And they came out and, of course, saw him, worked him out a little bit in the wintertime as well, decided that he was a guy that could be, at that time, what they call a draft and follow guy, not really trying to sign him after drafting him, but having the rights to watch him for another year.
The ironic part was the fact he got drafted in the 38th round back in 1998, the number Buehrle always loved because of Todd Buehrle of the Cardinals. And the other ironic story occurred right after he got drafted. Oster recalls a little bit of foreshadowing on Buehrle's part.
When they came down after they drafted him, they came down to school in the summertime and met him and stuff, and they brought him a Chicago White Sox hat. And he said teasingly to the scout, he says, a hat? He says, someday you're going to be paying me millions of dollars. And he kind of laughed as he said it, you know.
But before he was going to get paid or even sign with the White Sox, he had to perform his sophomore year first. And Buehrle certainly did not disappoint in that second season at Jefferson. After losing his first 4 starts, he went on to win 7 in a row to finish the year 7-4. He was even named a third-team junior college All-American. And unlike high school, where Buehrle ended his career by losing that district championship, this time he went out on a high note. It even involved Cardinals first baseman Albert Pujols. Rick Fiala begins.
In the regionals in 1999, the regionals were held at Jefferson College, and Albert Pujols was playing with Maplewood Junior College, and they were a tremendous team. We had a great team, and we both won our first game, and we saved Buehrle for the semifinals. And so in the semifinals, we're playing against Maplewoods, and there's Pujols on the other side of the field. He was playing shortstop at the time. And Mark gets the first 2 guys of the game out, and the third guy's Pujols.
Buehrle explains what happened next.
He took me deep. I'm wanting to say to right center. I do remember facing him, and he took me deep, but I do remember we won the game.
That's right. Buehrle did not let that first-inning home run by Pujols get to him. Fiala claims it was smooth sailing for Mark from there on out.
That was it. He shut him down the rest of the day, got Pujols out the next couple times. We win the game 7-1 and advance to the next game.
It was a great ending to Mark Buehrle's college career, but unfortunately, he never got to pitch for Jefferson again. His team lost to Merrimack in the next round, then lost a rematch with Maplewoods after that, knocking them out of the tournament and finishing in 3rd place. Albert's club went on to win it all. But facing Albert Pujols was not the only improvement Mark Buehrle made, though, while he was in college. His velocity certainly got better as well in his time there. Dave Oster explains why Buehrle ended up throwing so much harder.
I think him getting bigger, particularly the second year, bigger and stronger, especially his lower body, helped his velocity. You know, he came in throwing about 82 miles an hour and left throwing pretty close to, what he throws now, upper 80s. But the big thing, I think, Mark, was that he had excellent control and had that from the beginning. But his velocity improved, I think, a lot through some mechanic work and also getting stronger. But I think his mechanics helped his velocity improve as well as his strength.
Oster also explains how fixing his delivery helped Buehrle throw harder.
His arm angle got a little bit longer, which kind of short-armed the ball maybe a little bit at the beginning, and then started getting a little longer arm swing and picked up some velocity that way.
Because of that increase in velocity and having another solid season at Jefferson, the White Sox felt comfortable signing Buehrle in May before the draft in 1999, making sure they kept his rights. Now, the St. Charles native actually was set to attend Southwest Missouri State alongside Ryan Howard for his final 2 years of school, but he elected to sign a pro contract instead, receiving a signing bonus of less than $200,000. So if he was ever going to get paid the big bucks, Mark Buehrle had to go through the minor leagues first. He was sent to Single-A Burlington of the Midwestern League in 1999, a team that was 7 games under 500 after the first half of the year. But once Buehrle joined, he helped the Bees take off in the second half and win the league championship. The lefty went 7-4 for Burlington with an ERA barely above 4. Then the next year, Buehrle really emerged as a prospect. He was assigned to Double-A Birmingham in 2000 and had an exceptional season. 8 wins in just 16 starts, but an incredible 2.28 earned run average. Even more impressive, the 21-year-old walked just 17 in over 118 innings pitched. Recognition soon followed, as Buehrle was named to the Futures game that year. The United States beat the World Team 3-2, and Buehrle got the win. Soon after that, all his hard work would pay off. because the Major League team finally took notice. Despite pitching in just 36 games in the minor leagues, the White Sox decided their prized lefty was ready for the majors. Buehrle remembers exactly how it all happened.
I went out to dinner with Matt and Emily Ginter, teammate in Birmingham at the time. Sat down, Nick Capper, our the manager at the time, and Double-A called me and said, hey, I need to show you something over at the house. Can you come over here? And he's been saying it wasn't just like out of nowhere. He kind of said it for a while, all season long. He really did have something to show me. And I said, all right, hey, we just sat down for dinner. We ordered a bunch of food. When we get down, I'll call you and see if you're still going to be around. I'll come over there. And he said, all right, well, never mind. Obviously, you can't come here now. I just want to let you know you're going to the big leagues. You got called up. And I remember the server just brought up a couple appetizers and brought our food out. And I remember me, Matt, and Emily, no one could eat. Like, we were just so nervous and excited. I think all the food just went to waste because we couldn't even eat it. Of course, I kind of joked around with Matt and Emily. I said, hey, I'll take care of this bill, joking around because I just got called up.
So now it was time to tell his parents. And it just so happens that right around that time, both John and Pat Buehrle were supposed to go see their son pitch in Birmingham, Alabama. John remembers never being happier to cancel a flight.
My wife and I were sitting at home. In fact, my wife was in bed, and it was late at night. Phone rang, and Mark says something to the effect, you're going to change your plans or make some other arrangements about coming down. And I said, well, how come? Why? And he said, well, I got the call. Okay, so you got a call. Who called you? Dad, I got the call. And it still didn't sink in, so finally I was like, oh, my God.
Mark describes that incredible occasion.
Obviously, it was an emotional moment. Mom and Dad started tearing up. I started tearing up. And it was one of those moments that you got to be there kind of to see how everything went down and how emotional it got. But it was, obviously, when that first time you get that phone call, it's something special.
Coming up next, what is it like throwing a perfect game in the major leagues? And finally, is Mark Buehrle seriously thinking about retirement in the next couple of years? Find out next when Hometown Heroes returns on 101 ESPN.
Welcome back to 101 ESPN's exclusive presentation of Hometown Heroes. Now here's your host, Brian Feldman.
When Mark Buehrle finally arrived in the big leagues during the 2000 season, it was a dream come true for him. It was something he envisioned since early childhood, but something he did not envision was showing up for his first game and seeing his name spelled wrong on his jersey. Buehrle is spelled Buehrle. However, the equipment staff put the R before the H because that's how it sounds when you pronounce his name. So when Buehrle saw that, he says he was kind of scared just to tell anyone because, well, he's the new guy.
First day up in the big leagues, you don't know who to say. You don't know if they're playing a joke on you. I kind of went to the equipment guy and said, hey, my name's spelled wrong. And they had to take the H and the R off and kind of just glue them on there and put a weight on there to keep it on there for that game.
Well, it did not take very long for everyone to learn how to spell his name. Mark Buehrle had immediate success in the majors. Pitching largely out of the bullpen in 2000, he went 4-1 before being given a full-time spot in the starting rotation the next year. The lefty won 16 games in 01 and 19 in 02 while making his first ever All-Star game. He averaged more than 15 wins a year over the next 3 seasons, culminating in his second All-Star selection in 2005. And that game he started because Toronto's Roy Halladay had a broken leg. Buehrle pitched 2 scoreless innings and got the win. But that was just the beginning of a magical 05 season. The White Sox went on to win its first World Series title since 1917, with Buehrle going 2-0 and a 3.47 ERA during the playoffs. In fact, the St. Charles native became the first ever pitcher to start and save consecutive games in the World Series when he followed up his Game 2 start against the Astros with his first career save in Game 3. Yet little did Buehrle know he would break even more records. After throwing a no-hitter on April 18, 2007 against Texas, Buehrle made baseball history 2 years later. July 23, 2009, the White Sox hosting the Rays. Mark's father, John, begins.
I was up at Mark's property, and I had just gone up that day. I had just gone up there, and I went in the house, and I turned it on. And every once in a while up there in the country, the reception's not 100%. Even with satellite. And I turned on the baseball game, and it says searching for satellite signal. Yeah, okay, no biggie. So I unloaded a couple things, came back in, and searching for satellite signal. 10 minutes later, searching for satellite, and just kept going and going. I said, oh, crap, I turned TV off. I tried resetting it, searching for satellite signal, never wouldn't stop.
So he had to call his wife, Pat, for updates on the game, not knowing anything at all that was going on. John Buehrle continues.
Finally, it's like 7th inning, I called her again. She said, well, it's still 5-0, but they're all saying he's got a you-know-what going. And she would not say perfect game. She didn't want to jinx it, I said, what, a perfect game? No, don't say that. Don't say that. I was hoping, but I just I didn't think it was going to happen. Finally, the last out of the 8th inning, my satellite kicked in, and I saw that third out. That's when Hawk Harrelson, the announcer for the Sox, said, call your daughters, call your friends, your neighbors, and Mark Buehrle has a perfect game going to the 9th inning.
And in the 9th, the dream of a perfect game almost ended.
That ball hit deep in the left center field. Wise back. Makes the catch. What a play.
During that time, Mark Buehrle's good friend and White Sox teammate John Danks was in the hospital, and he gives his story.
It was like a scene out of Major League 2 when the manager's in the hospital listening to the radio and going crazy, and I was calling all the nurses in. I wouldn't let anyone leave. I didn't want anyone to jinx it, and I had a little heart monitor on me, and whenever Kapler hit that ball in the 9th inning that Dwayne Wise made the catch, my heart rate doubled. It went up to 110 beats a minute.
But the game was not over yet. Buehrle then struck out Tampa Bay's Michael Hernandez swinging for the second out. Next up, shortstop Jason Bartlett.
Alexei! Yes! History!
Mark's father, John Buehrle, describes his reaction.
I just busted out in tears. It was unbelievable. Just the emotions were just so high. If there's ever been a euphoric moment in anyone's life, that would have to be it.
And Mark Buehrle explains what it was like knowing he had thrown the 18th perfect game in baseball history.
Surprise and just shock that you did something like that, not knowing they ever dreamed of doing something like that. I think most of it was later that night. We flew to Detroit that night, so I think it was more that night and that next day, just kind of letting everything sink in. Obviously, it's a great and special feeling.
Remarkably, Buehrle's incredible run was not yet finished. On his very next start, July 28th, he had another perfect game going. When that was broken up in the 6th inning, Mark Buehrle had retired 45 consecutive batters over the 2 games, which still stands today as a Major League Baseball record. 2 days later, Illinois Governor Pat Quinn declared July 30th, 2009 as Mark Buehrle Day. As amazing as that is, the honors, though, would keep coming. At the end of the season, the lefty received an award he had never won before, the Gold Glove. And if anyone thought he did not deserve it, he put those doubts to rest on opening day the next year. On April 5th, 2010, Buehrle may have won himself yet another Gold Glove.
Ground ball off of the shin of Buehrle. This is going to leave a mark. It's into foul territory. What a flip by Buehrle! Blind! Through the legs with the glove, right on the money from foul territory to get the runner.
That play is still talked about to this day. On ESPN's Baseball Tonight, each and every day, Web Gems have what it calls the Buehrle meter, where the top defensive plays are measured against what Mark did on April 5th. Well, while that play should be discussed for a long time to come, his contract will not go on forever. Buehrle's current 4-year deal is up after the 2011 season, and he says he still has visions of one day playing for the hometown club.
I mean, obviously, growing up a Cardinal fan, and everybody, I think anybody that grows up a certain fan of a team, you watch your whole life growing up, you've always had a dream of putting that jersey on and stepping on that field. But at the same time, I would like to finish my career here in Chicago, so it's both. I mean, I'd love to finish here and spend my whole career in Chicago, but it comes down to it in a couple of years that they don't want me here and the Cardinals do, and I sign a deal there, and that'd be a dream come true.
Buehrle even says he's run into Cardinals GM John Mozeliak a few times.
I've joked around with Mo. I mean, I've sat next to him. It seems like every banquet or every award ceremony I get seated next to him, and we've BS'd around and kind of joking around about, playing here and whatnot.
The question is, will Mark Buehrle even be playing baseball when his contract runs out? He's got a 3-year-old son named Braden and a 1-year-old daughter named Brooklyn that he loves more than anything in the world, along with his wife Jamie. And when it comes between baseball and family, Buehrle says family comes first.
I want to see my kids grow up. Guys that do have kids in softball, soccer, whatever it could be, playing, and they get that phone call saying, "Daddy, I had 2 hits today," or a pitch, 3 innings. And just seeing the guys' reactions, just not being able to be there, whether it's the first game. So I don't want to miss out on that stuff. And my kids have a couple years till they get into that. But I don't want to keep on playing for too long, and next thing you know, I come home and my kids are walking out the door going to college, or, they're going off to school somewhere where, I just kind of missed their whole childhood. I just want to be home and see them grow up and be there and, have a father figure in their life.
But friend and teammate John Danks does not believe that for a second.
No, he's not retiring. I mean, he's very family-oriented. He puts his family before anything. With that being said, he's going to be a hot commodity, whether it's here in Chicago or St. Louis. I mean anywhere. But I think if it's a place he wouldn't mind going, I could see him playing for a few more years for sure.
Regardless if he continues to pitch or not, no one can argue the fact Mark Buehrle has had a terrific major league career. He's a 4-time All-Star, a World Series champion, won a Gold Glove, thrown a no-hitter and a perfect game, led the American League in innings pitched twice, and holds the White Sox team record with 8 opening day starts. All from a late bloomer who cannot even touch 80 miles an hour entering high school. And that's just the thing. Even those closest to Buehrle back then had no idea he'd turn out to be the player he is today, including his head coach at Francis Howell North High School.
My name is Bobby Donahue, not Bobby Nostradamus. And I can tell you this right now. I thought the kid had an opportunity to go on to the next level. Being a couple years behind because of the fact that he got cut as a freshman and a sophomore, I thought a good JUCO program was a perfect fit for him to start his education, get seen, develop as a pitcher. Once he got there, I could see him having success. Pitch a perfect game, no-hitter, get a save, and the World Series and a win. No, you just can't fathom that.
Buehrle's college coach Dave Oster agrees.
I don't think anyone, the best of scouts, could have projected that he would have the fantastic career he's having. The thing that I always told the scouts, this is, I think, his major strength, is just his overall demeanor. He's steady, he gives you all those innings and constantly throwing strikes. And to say, he'd had that kind of success, I don't think no one could have predicted that.
While people may be surprised at what Mark Buehrle's become on the field, they certainly are not off of it. His younger sister, Amy, raves about how great he is with his family.
If I could clone my brother, I would be the richest woman in the world. He is an amazing father. He is an unbelievable husband. Jamie and those kids are so lucky to have my brother. He is an all-around, downright, just amazing person. He's perfect. He's amazing. My 5-year-old looks up to him more than anybody in this world. And my 5-year-old just started T-ball a few weeks ago, and he tells everybody, I'm going to be just like my Uncle Mark when I grow up. You have a 5-year-old that admires him over anybody in this world. He wants to be just like his Uncle Mark. And, I love it. I couldn't ask for my son to admire anybody better.
Buehrle's younger sister Amy also says the 4-year, $56 million deal he signed a couple of years ago has not changed him one bit.
I mean, yeah, he has money and he has nice houses and he has nice cars and, he has amazing things. But other people in that world have it too, but he doesn't let it go to his head. He's the same guy that I knew that I used to wrestle with, and we'd fight over who was going to set the table at dinner, and, we played kickball with in the backyard. And, I mean, he's still Mark. He's the same guy that he was when I was 5 years old.
Buehrle's good friend Nick Post sees the exact same qualities.
One word to describe him is unselfish. He puts everybody before him. He does whatever it takes to make other people happy. Every time I see Mark, he's got a smile on his face and his kids are laughing. To me, he's the best dad. No matter if he's gave up 10 runs, 6 runs, 10 hits, threw a perfect game, no matter what. He comes home to his wife and kids, and he's the same guy as he was when he left the house.
And Mark's father, John Buehrle, tries to explain the joy in watching his son have so much success.
I'll be very honest with you. I don't know that I can really tell you what it feels like. But looking back at his achievements, the perfect game, the all-star appearances, the no-hitter, it's just little things like that. You're so proud of your kid for doing something that makes other people happy. Not just me, but I know that what he's doing is making millions probably of other people, happy.